So hello, everyone. This is Andy Brisley with Apps Associates, and I'd like to welcome you back to this edition of Value Chain Minutes. So we're continuing our discussion around the embedded capability of scenario planning within cloud supply planning. In past sessions, we provided high-level overviews and some of the benefits that scenario planning can provide. In this session, I'd like to talk about what the process may actually look like when running a scenario plan, along with what some of that output may look like and how it can help people make these business decisions. And with me today is Shane Helston, one of the leading experts in Oracle planning. So Shane, if you could set the stage on the event that has caused us to run a scenario plan, what the situation is, et cetera, and then go through some of the steps that are required, that'd be great.
Sounds good. So thanks again for having me, Andy. So let's take a simple example that most companies can relate to right now: cross-border tariffs on raw materials and or finished goods. So we've seen a lot of clients that out there that really have a lot of difficulty being able to understand what the impact is one way or the other, which of course introduces some potential risk and confusion around, which suppliers they should be using on which side of the border, because simply they don't have that analysis at their fingertips in order to really be able to understand the impact of that implication. So, we've discussed it. Obviously, you need supply planning cloud, and that's the engine behind the scenes, working with the data and providing a lot of those analytics that you'd be looking at side by side. So supply planning has a lot of great analytics. And as I've mentioned earlier, the ability to change a lot of your master data and run these in a what if type of analysis to be able to really look at a baseline versus a what if type of analysis. So if you were to think about a tariff and an increase on the cost of your raw materials from a country like China, for example, you can model that really quickly and look at what it's going to do to your demands at risk, your bottom line, your gross margins. You can do that fairly quickly. So I'm going to show you today. And so, supply planning has, again, a lot of the seeded KPIs. It has things like days of cover, customer service, resource utilization, number of stockouts, and again, financial metrics, such as what we're going to look at. So let's go have a look and see what simulating these tariff costs can, and the impact of those within supply planning. So, for example, here within supply planning, these are just a few of many different types of key performance indicators within a given supply plan. So you'll notice that we're looking at a baseline up in the top left-hand corner here. So this is our baseline plan, and I'm looking at one of the quarters out for the remainder of the year. And I'm looking at our revenue. I'm looking at our total end item cost. I'm looking at our gross margin, which is, some simple math. And our margin percentage, I wish I was running that business. That's a high margin. But you get a visibility into all the different types of costs: manufacturing costs, total supply planning costs, purchasing costs, and there's other costs in here as well, like inventory carrying costs, for example. So with any given scenario that you're looking at, if you're bringing in your price list and you've got your cost populated within your master data, you can bring these costs right into supply planning to look at what those numbers are going to look like if you were to go with that particular supply plan. Okay. Now, within that baseline plan, you can inline with a very simple click of a button, you can duplicate this plan and give it another name. So for example, I'm going to model the potential impact of a 25% increase on some of our raw materials that we're sourcing from China. Okay. And what that's going to do to our profitability. So I can duplicate that plan, give the plan a name. So I've got a copy of my production plan where I can use basically as a sandbox to make changes in. And we know that we're not going to disrupt anything from a planning perspective because we're not releasing orders or anything from this particular copy of this plan. So you can do some quick searches. So if you're using item categories, for example, I can say anything that's China sourced, I could provide it into a given item category. So I can narrow those down from my buy items, for example, and do a search. And then when that comes back with a list of items, you can very quickly do a mass change. So I can say my standard cost, I'm going to increase by a percentage of 25%. So what happens is the cost within that particular what if scenario for those particular items that you've changed would have gone up by 25%. So once you run your plan, those, and you can see now I'm no longer in my baseline plan. I'm in my copy of my production baseline plan. So this tariff increase of 25%, I can see, okay, my revenue hasn't changed. I know that, but I can see all these costs have gone up, and I know my margin went down from 66 to 60, and all my supply chain costs, aside from my manufacturing costs, have gone up as well. Okay, so if we've looked at the baseline, we've looked at the scenario plan, but then we can look at them in line. So supply planning has the ability to take these two plans, put them into one holistic view. Okay, so I can look at things exactly side by side. So my revenue hasn't changed in this particular scenario, but my end item cost. So you can see in my baseline plan, my end item cost was 229, and then my end item costs for my increase of tariffs, they've gone up by 50,000 or something like that, which in turn has reduced my gross margins from 464 to 416. And instead of making a 66% in my baseline, I've gone down to 60. And you can see this, everything from manufacturing costs, total supply chain costs, purchasing costs. You can see that's where the bulk of the increase of the costs have been coming from. So at this point, what I would be doing as a follow-up to this is potentially looking at alternate sources of supply. So if you recall what I said earlier about, there's many different types of changes. Well, there's nothing stopping me from looking at this from a strategic sourcing perspective and start to think, well, perhaps I should start looking at alternate suppliers within my own North American continent to be able to meet these material demand and start understanding those impacts. So those could potentially be other scenarios that you could vet against your baseline as well. So you don't have to have just one what if scenario. You could have many, and you can have all these different copies of your plan with different forecasts, different costs on your items, and really be able to get that comparison side by side and look at these and really be able to be prepared to talk to executive management about potential longer term strategic sourcing changes.
Well, that's been great. So again, it's not just for, hey, my machine went down or the resources came offline. This can easily be used for strategic decision making and support, whether it's part of an IBPX or whatever it may be. The tools that you have shown can really help companies prepare for that VUCA situation we've talked about.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
All right. Well, again, Shane, thanks for showing us that quick demonstration. And again, everybody, if you have any questions or comments, don't hesitate to reach out to Shane or myself. And don't forget to sign up for our YouTube channel. Thanks a lot, everybody.